Hi, everyone. This is Gary Berman, host of the Cyber Hero Adventure Show, with a special micro briefing today with Bryson Bort, the CEO of Scythe.
I don't know. It
So,
felt superhero-ish, like I was flying in. It came maybe across more as a dab. I don't know.
well, okay, so we'll start right from the beginning. As a person who wears costumes on occasion, I am in love with yours. Maybe you can share with our audience why you have a unicorn on your head.
Sure. Well, it's more than just on my head. These are one of my custom hoodies that I had a tailor make for me. I founded a pen testing consultancy 10 years ago called Grim. And at Grim, we used to do an annual T-shirt contest for DEF CON. And some number of years ago, I thought it'd be really funny to have, and actually I have a representative sticker around here I can show you. Thought I did. Um, of a Grim Reaper riding a unicorn, and the design just blew up. Everybody loved it. Everybody wanted a piece of it. And shortly after that, we spun Scythe, the platform that I do full time now, our threat emulation platform, out of Grim. And I was like, I need a cool logo because Grim's logo was pretty cool. I mean, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually, it was designed by a Blizzard graphic designer that I hired like on Fiverr 10 years ago. And so I'm like, okay, something just as cool. Well, a scythe is boring. It's just a piece of wood and metal. People seem to be into these unicorns, so let's go with that. And so the design is the unicorn with the scythe, and it follows what I call the Disney villain design philosophy, which is that kids think it's cute, but adults get the joke.
Oh, that's incredibly clever.
And when you're the founder and the CEO, I mean, you're the face, so why not make it real?
Speaking of your face, I mean, you have a very, sort of funny face. And I say that in the nicest, possible
In the
way.
nicest way, you're funny looking. Yeah.
Well, you called
I'm
me an
expressive.
oddball. Wait a
Expressive.
minute. Hold. Time out. Before we hit the record button, we were talking about some mutual, colleagues in the community, and it was relayed that this person thought I was a bit of an oddball. Can you explain? Are you an oddball?
I mean, odd is by definition not the norm. And who wants to be normal? It's boring.
Well, all right. I could listen and learn from you all day. Maybe we'll have you on a full episode a little bit down the road. In the meantime, the mission here today is to shine the light on the Hack Miami conference that's going to be taking place in Sunny Isles, Florida, which is kind of Miami, from May 19th to the 20th. And you're going to be giving a speech there. Maybe you can give our audience a little bit of a preview of some of the cool stuff that you're going to share and how you go about it. I think right away it should be fun and engaging just from this conversation. But
Yeah, I actually we did not prep me on that part of this. So you had talked about one of your claim to fame was that you did 57 conferences in 4 years.
yeah.
I do more than that in less than a year. So
Whoa.
prepping me to a talk that I'm giving in 2 months, skipping the 10 to 15 talks I'm giving in between those, I don't remember which talk I'm actually giving at Hack Miami, and I was trying to go into my calendar for that date to figure out what it is. See, very authentic here. I'm just as messed up as everyone else. See, odd. Uh,
I
and what the
love that.
calendar says is my presentation is get off the sidelines, um, and I would not name that my talk, so I'm not sure they sent me the right title for my talk. The
Well,
abstract reads like my kind of thinking. Yeah, so cybersecurity isn't solved. It's why there are so many products constantly appearing. We may be running out of made up words for company names. See, it sounds like me. We'll talk about how you can get involved, whether it's in your enterprise, angel investing, or how to launch your own startup. So it sounds like what I'm going to be doing is talking through the how to launch a company and the ideation and basically the ecosystem of cybersecurity, similar to what we were talking about pre-recording, where Target defined is a milestone to defining the modern cybersecurity ecosystem. It's why there are so many names and we're running out of them, of coming up with made up words to define something. Um, We'll talk
Let
about
me ask you about
ideation.
that. Forgive the interruption one moment, but you just said something that keyed off with me. So, I don't know if it's made up names, but what's your take on zero trust architecture?
Okay. So first of all,
Wait,
it's
wait, why did you?
because
uh,
it's a vendor word, right? Zero trust is really
oh,
vendor marketing. It is really impressive how that phrase was in the executive order that came from the White House. And the reason I think that's impressive is cybersecurity has now reached a point that the White House would even talk to it. That's
right.
a new thing. That's new. That's awesome. That's great. That shows how we have grown as an industry and we're starting to be taken a little bit more seriously by the normies, the mainstream.
Right.
Why you got that though is it's the same way that we're promised machine learning to solve our defenses. Hey, Chat GPT is cool. GPT-4, which just came out last night, is even cooler. But these are not yet. They're not a human yet. They are not solving security yet. Zero trust is just another way of saying configuration management is really important. I mean, there are a lot of these solutions. Segmentation is another example. Segmentation, particularly in operational technology, valuable. It's a key way for me to say I can reduce impact. I can have a choke point. As we used to say in the military, no obstacle will work unless there's overwatch. If I can't maintain an obstacle, it doesn't stay. And that's where I would put zero trust. Zero trust is a great idea. It's a great concept. It fits with what my personal design philosophy when I look at offense of as a defender, assume breach should be the starting point. It doesn't mean it's the only point to defense, but it is the part where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. So if you have any question about where you stand, start with assume breach because you're focusing on what you can control and where the attacker makes the most effect on you, right? Post access, assume breach. Tying that back into zero trust. So we're assuming that space, but it's configuration management that makes that difficult. There is no tool that can tell me what data, what users, and what assets mean what. And so just establishing like, well, it's this is the authorization between these two things and they're not trusted. Well, that's what an attacker does for a living. I masquerade, I take credentials, I look like an authorized user. I'm going to abuse the heck out of a zero trust framework unless that configuration management is done at the granularity to do it. So implementation and then maintenance are the tail that makes that so difficult. So that's why you got that response because it's one of those things. It's like, yes, it's a great concept, but putting it in place, well, that takes effort.
So going back, and let me know when you have to go. But there's so many things you're saying that I think our audience would find very beneficial for sure, as would the attendees when they come and listen to you at the Hack Miami conference. Did I mention it's May 19th and 20th in Miami?
And I'm speaking, and we think we know what I'm speaking about. Yeah, why don't I finish that? So we'll be talking about why the ecosystem is the way it is, what you can do about that from the inside or the outside, your responsibilities for that, and then, well, if you want to help be a part of the solution, how to start your own company and the economics of that. I think a lot of folks don't really understand because money is not the point, but money is the lifeblood of an idea. Without money, you can't do the idea. You can't do it for long. You're not going to get other people to join you for very long to do the idea. And so understanding why things are the way they are and what your model would be is absolutely critical.
Before we hit the record button, you said something else that I think was incredibly, insightful. That you showed me Dark Hammer. Can you hold Dark Hammer up to the camera so our audience can see that, and maybe you can explain what we're looking at? Yeah, that's perfect. That looks like a tank, right? Or
It is some sort of sci-fi futuristic artillery slash tank.
yeah,
So I,
yeah.
I did a stint in armor. I am very opinionated about what a tank is and what a tank is not. And so that, for those of you who are anywhere near the space, you could appreciate the sensitivity around what we define as a tank. But what this is so I'm on the board of advisors of the Army Cyber Institute. Essentially, it was an Army think tank related to cyber. It's in the name, based out of West Point. And there are a number of projects that they did. And my personal favorite is one called Jack Voltaic, which was worked with multiple cities and the military and other agencies to look at the interdependency of critical infrastructure and force projection. Turns out, since Star Trek isn't real, we can't just instantaneously put forces around the world. And so civilian critical infrastructure affects military readiness. This was another project that they did which is, I think, speaks a lot to what you do, Gary, and the use of graphic novels to illustrate concepts for education and awareness on different parts of cybersecurity.
Wow, that's beautiful. Um, wow, there's something else that you said that relates to what you're holding up is the distillation of complicated technology information into something people can get their heads around, at least a little bit. And you advise that you accomplish that in a couple different ways. One of which our audience is getting to see you now that you're a pretty funny guy.
And if you see me at Hack Miami, you'll get it in person where there is audience interaction and physical comedy as a part of it.
And if you order,
like, buy now, get this thing.
I was just going to say that. And if you order now, we'll send you a set of Ginsu kitchen knives. They slice, they dice. Wait, there's more.
Yep. Everything but do your homework.
Yeah, exactly. But going back to this notion of critical infrastructure, right now I think there are 16 designations from CISA, and there are other sectors of the economy looking to do that, like the space ISAC is trying to get a designation as a critical infrastructure. And things like that. What's your view of cybersecurity and space?
I mean, the only thing that's relevant to me, of course, is satellites. Satellites are one of those invisible fabrics that underpin so much of the things that we do. I think what I would say is, putting this in a broader perspective, one of the challenges we had, as you noted, there are 16 designated critical infrastructure agencies. Specifically, those are called SRMAs, Sector Risk Management Agencies, and they are not resourced to be able to do the job. We see this time and time again. This is what happened with Colonial Pipeline. The joke I make about Colonial Pipeline is everybody was surprised the TSA was in charge, including the TSA. It's humor because it's a joke. I'm friends with the guy who ran cybersecurity policy at the TSA when that happened. And if you look at it, they had 5 people. I mean, what the heck are you going to do with 5 people? And I believe they were responsible for 3 elements of critical infrastructure: oil and natural gas, aviation, and I want to say there was a third, transportation. I mean, that's not their fault. That was where Congress funded them. And you can make all the proclamations you want. And this is my biggest criticism, or let's take it away from criticism. This is the biggest opportunity that I think federal government has, which is, we can't solve this problem with paper. You can't tell people there's a problem. You have to reach in and help fix the problem. And when you are resourced with only 5 people, you can't fix anything. And so we have this challenge for federal government where they are not resourced, because it is still that young as an idea, to solve these problems. And so when you mention, hey, let's add more to the plate, like space should be a thing, I think the challenge we have is, if everything's critical, nothing is. And so we need to prioritize and really understand the dependencies of critical infrastructure sectors and what's most important, what's slightly less important, and have categories of that, and then fund, staff, and fix those in that order. And I would say, I apologize, because space must mean something to you. Space is probably toward the bottom right now.
Well, just to clarify, we've done several shows on the topic. So in that sense, it means something, to our audience. But there are other more urgent needs, like the ones you're citing. If I'm not mistaken, in the budget that was just submitted to Congress, there's something like $3 billion for CISA. Do you know about that?
I mean, I believe CISA is just above, maybe like around 3,000 employees. That's part of what Director Jen Easterly is pushing, is this combination of, I have to continue to educate, I still have to grow the place. There is the challenge of then also running it efficiently and building all these pieces. So she is literally changing the tires on the car going 80 miles per hour on the highway. And I know that metaphor is overused, but I think it's very apt with respect to the challenge that she's having with there. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's more money coming. I mean, the good news is going back to zero trust in the executive order from the White House. The money is coming, but even if there's money, that doesn't mean you have the talent to do it. We know there's a shortage.
Yeah, and how can the federal government, I'm asking almost rhetorically, compete for talent, in a where there's a dearth of the higher level people that, would be required to protect critical infrastructure?
So I didn't ask the question before the show. Am I allowed to use profanity or not?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so it's simple. This argument comes up a lot, right? I've worked in government for a long time. Mission really can go far. If you are doing a cool mission, it's not about money. Money's nice, have enough to be comfortable, but and you will be with government work, and there have certainly been progress with establishing different pay grades. So I mean, it's not as bad as it used to be. But mission is the first thing, and then the second, and this is where government fucks up, is yeah, mission's cool, but we treat you like shit, and that is the leadership and organizational responsibility of every part of management and government to not treat folks like bureaucratic bullshit. And that's the weakness I see, less than it is the money. People leave because they're treated poorly, and it's the way it is, not because of money.
Well, one of the things I had a chance to spend a few minutes with the director Easterly in the past, and one of the things to me that I think she's really embarking on and is doing very, very well to attempt to treat to kind of meet people where they're at, you know, and like wearing hoodies or something, and as
She
opposed
wears
to,
dragon pants.
I know. I saw the speech she gave at RSA a few years ago, and that's when I said, okay, she's we have that spirit in common, anyways, and so, I how do you think that's going?
How do I about you
I
treat
mean,
it?
do you think that the culture is changing to where, I don't want to use the broad word of a hacker, because like you said earlier, there's black and white and red and blue, but that people within the cybersecurity ecosystem, would be more open to taking a job in government, because of the cultural shifts that are beginning to happen?
There's certainly been a number of high profile hires at CISA in the last 6 months that are interesting. So let's see how that plays out.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else as we're wrapping up here that you'd like to share with our audience? What about your hacking the Capitol event? Tell us about that, and maybe we can.
Sure, because I don't have enough free time. I co founded a nonprofit with Tom Van Norman called the ICS Village. We are a 501(c)(3), and we travel the United States and sometimes the world. We build critical infrastructure exhibits to educate on critical infrastructure and industrial control system security. I think probably the thing that made us initially famous was we'd been demonstrating the exact same technique that was done against the Oldsmar water facility a couple of years ago. You can go and see videos of us demonstrating that. I think they're available online all the way back to 18, and we were doing that before then. So we're pretty relevant, I think. And we've been doing that. And it occurred to me that at the time I lived in Washington, D.C., why aren't we doing this with the folks that actually really need to get educated, get connected to the community? Because it's not so much that staffers and members of Congress don't know the challenge. It's that they don't have the relationships to be able to reach out to somebody beyond the K Street lobbyists who clearly have an agenda to get insight and help, because it turns out drafting legislation and policy is really hard to do. So we created, we call it Hack the Capitol. We have our 6th annual one coming up here in May. It's going to be a 2-day conference with multiple keynotes from agency directors. You mentioned Jen Easterly, she's keynoting, along with some other ones, and members of Congress. We're bipartisan, so we have Republican and Democratic senators and members of Congress that will be talking, along with all sorts of different journalists and members of industry, academia, and government. Pretty much
Wow.
anything you could ever want to learn about critical infrastructure, it will be there. It will be in person in McLean at MITRE headquarters, or I guess MITRE compound. I don't know what to call that place. I don't know if it's a headquarters. And available virtually. So if you can't attend in person, I believe it's really important, and this is one of the things we learned from the pandemic, is making everything more accessible to more folks.
Indeed. And coincidentally, I gave a 90-minute keynote at MITRE about critical infrastructure several years ago. So once again, our mission seemed to be
Well,
aligned.
Gary, we're looking for speakers, so the CFP is out. Submit.
Oh, I don't do papers. I do superhero comics. I mean, come on.
I, if you're
I
educating on
cannot
critical
sit there and
infrastructure, that sounds useful.
yeah, but I mean, the only possible value that I would be able to bring is similar to what you do, which is to shine the light on the unsung heroes who toil in anonymity to keep us safe, and to do so in a way that by the time the audience, by the time we're done, my success metric would be if people feel elevated and respected and motivated to continue this relentless mission, so, and how to distill all this into something people can get, their heads around and stuff. But so that's the only sort of thing. But no, I don't submit paper. Well, you know what?
It's
I have
not a
to.
paper, it's a presentation. So if you have something, a topic to talk about that is valuable to the group, that is what we're looking for.
Okay, well, I'll take that as a tacit endorsement to one oddball to another. And to our audience, of which a subset of you are oddballs, I know you, so I can validate that that's true. Special thank you to Bryson at Scythe for who you are and what you do, and most importantly, why you do it.